I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown. And once again, we're this time, the nomination time. We're going to have another huge episode, so stay tuned. At the top of the show, I'm going to give my SAG Nominations Reactions and talk about how this very first industry award affects the Oscar race. I'm also going to talk about 4 different categories, all the different sort of sound categories. So we're talking about Best Original Score, Best Original Song, Best Sound Editing, and Best Sound Mixing. And remember, these are the technical categories that you need to know and need to stay tuned for, because of these little ones that you're not too sure about. Everyone knows about the actors and the writing and whatnot, but these small categories will really help you win your Oscar pool. So, jumping into it, I've been sort of skipping my section at the top of the show, the rising and the falling, just because I've been talking about the nominations, the predictions, and I talk about it in a way, certain movies that are rising and falling. So just note that I'm sort of going to be talking about that in conjunction with the SAG Nominations Reactions. So now I'm going to have the piece of paper just in my hand so I can reference it and tell you the nominations. So for Best Ensemble, didn't do too good on this one, got 2 out of 5. The nominees were The Irishman, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Bombshell, Parasite, and Jojo Rabbit. I think this is an interesting category because on one hand, you know, for many years it was often a predictor. Oftentimes we look at SAG, PGA, and DGA as sort of the 3 predictors for the Oscars. But with sort of the introduction of preferential ballots, and I really think with the introduction of Astra joining SAG, not only are you talking about members of the Academy, which, you know, many of the SAG actors are members of the Academy, so it was sort of a great sample size. Now you're acting in after people, which are media personality and radio hosts and things like that. So they're not necessarily part of the Academy, therefore it's a general group now, and I'd say it's a little bit more popular and populist, I guess. So it's less so been nominating it. You know, I talked about it in my nominations video, but before this on Best Ensemble, the last film to win Best Picture without getting a Best SAG Ensemble nomination was Braveheart. Then what happens? Last year, Green Book wins, and the year before that, The Shape of Water wins. In both years, we had Astra introduced. So maybe this award's not as significant as before, maybe it's a little bit more populist, but it's still a large branch of the Academy in the actors that really tell you what they like and really sort of will help chances, because as much as we like the Globes and they'll tell us about certain, you know, media sort of buzz, things like that, ultimately they're not members of the Academy. That's a group of about 90 people. You know, the Academy's a group of about 3,000, and SAG is, you know, even bigger than that, and there's certain crossover. So Oscar voters are voting for SAG, some of them, so there's some interesting things to take out of what they like. So The Irishman and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood seem to be the sort of 2 front runners. They've been getting in everywhere, they've been getting extra nominations, they've hit all their marks, essentially. And really seem to be sort of the 1-2 that we expected it to be, but it seems to be panning out that way. That doesn't mean it's necessarily going to win, because there's a sort of a late surge right now, which will be really important for this short Oscar cycle, that being of Parasite. You know, I thought Marriage Story used to be in that 3rd spot, but with Parasite just surprising and overperforming in every single possible category, getting a screenplay nomination at the Globes, getting in for Best Ensemble here, people love Parasite, and it's a serious contender at Best Picture. I may even have it at number 1 right now. It's hard to say. You know, you always want to try to judge passion and influence and respect, and what do people sort of like of that sort of stuff. You know, The Irishman, I know some people don't like you know, the visual effects and the de-aging. That sort of turns people off for 3.5 hours. It's this whole big debacle. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, people maybe like the end of it, but not sort of the middle, and some scenes maybe drag on. Parasite seems to be almost universally loved, and with it doing so well here, I'd be surprised, you know, I think you'll be surprised as well of how well Parasite does come Oscar nomination night. I'm expecting a lot of nominations, despite being a foreign film. I think it's going to be really crucial. Then Jojo Rabbit, this is sort of a movie that's hard to judge. I thought that maybe it would do well at the Globes, and then it didn't, which surprised me, but then does pretty well here, gets an ensemble, so clearly they like the film. I still think it's going to get a Best Picture nominee, but Taika Waititi right now I think is maybe slipping out of my predictions for Best Director. I still think the movie's well liked enough because it's still got the acting support here, including Scarlett Johansson for Best Supporting Actress, which was important. And then Bombshell is really the sort of surprise, I guess. You know, it does seem like an actor's movie in that sense, maybe a Vice in a lot of ways. That's sort of the main comparison, and Vice did very well, and including, you know, I'm boosting Bombshell in a lot of categories. I think it maybe even slips in for a Best Picture. I think it can even get in for a screenplay. Multiple nominations all around. We'll talk about Nicole Kidman a little bit later. And who's sort of hurt from these nominations? Mostly it's Little Woman. not getting in for Best Ensemble, not getting in for Florence Pugh, not getting in for Saoirse Ronan. I mean, that just being completely shut out is huge, 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 because yes, this movie's breaking late, and so was 1917, which is, you know, notable. We must consider that into the factors. But we also have to realize that this is a movie that has a great ensemble, that if it was seriously a Best Picture contender, it would get in here. It's now not even maybe guaranteed a Best Picture nominee. Greta Gerwig seems to be sort of the female director that everyone's pushing for, but maybe they're not going to go with that. Maybe they're just going to say, hey, these are the 5 best directors of the year, and, you know, maybe they're all male, but it's not sort of force this diversity of Greta Gerwig or whatnot, because, you know, you can debate the merits of the movie and whether she deserves it or not, but in terms of what their perspective, in terms of the movies they like, they're not going to, you know, just give Little Woman 1 nomination for Best Director. You know, that'll be hard to find. Florence Pugh, which I felt very confident in, is maybe not even again for Best Supporting Actress. I still think Saoirse Ronan still can get in because they like her so much. And I still think it will do pretty well at the Oscars, because I do think it's going to get in at some of the technical categories. But that being said, I look at some of the guilds, and maybe it's just because it's breaking too late, and that's really sort of bad on this late Oscars cycle, but it's not getting in at the art directors guilds or costume designers. It's like, what do you mean? The Little Woman was made for these categories, and they're not even getting in at the guild awards. So maybe it gets shut out completely. Little Woman was a huge surprise. I thought it would do very well and get multiple nominations. Maybe not even get 1 now, so it's definitely going to be hurt by these and some of the guilds. Now jumping over to Best Lead Actress, I got 4 out of 5, so did better in this one. Renee Zellweger for Judy, Charlize Theron for Bombshell, Scarlett Johansson for Marriage Story, Cynthia Erivo for Harriet, and Lupita Nyong'o for Us. So in my Globes video, I said Lupita's campaign was done. I guess I'm wrong. I still predicted her here because this seem like a SAG Awards, and they do like movies that came out earlier because the sort of full amount of body can sort of see it and know it, and a lot of people did see Us. I think she still sort of slips out there. There's a lot of big campaign by Universal. I know that they are sort of campaigning for her, so maybe that gets in, but I think there's some other factors that maybe this is traditionally just less Oscar-y, and Us is maybe not the most Oscar movie. You know, Get Out wasn't either, but Get Out was sort of had a lot of steam and momentum and critical acclaim. Us is sort of a little bit more mixed. If it were to get anything, it's going to get Lupita, and then I talked about Saoirse. I still think she gets in. Cynthia Erivo, though, was sort of maybe more of a lock than I gave her credit for. I haven't been predicting her because I wasn't sure if people have been seeing Harriet. Guess what? People have been seeing Harriet. It's been doing really well at the box office. It's got a great cinema score. People like her. She's a Tony Award-winning actress. She's well respected within the industry, clearly. And this sort of seems like a great breakout actress for Hollywood. And since, you know, she was in Widows and Bad Times at the El Royale last year, and of course she's a known actress, but in terms of Hollywood, she's sort of a young breaking actress, so I think this sort of fits her in beautifully. I think Cynthia Erivo now gets the nomination at the Oscars. Best Lead Actor, we have Joaquin Phoenix so I went for 3 out of 5 on this one. Joaquin Phoenix, Joker, Adam Driver, Marriage Story, Leonardo DiCaprio, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Christian Bale, Ford v Ferrari, Taron Egerton, Rocketman. The sort of mess would be 2 ones. First one, Robert De Niro. You know, him not getting in here really hurts his chances, and in a competitive category, that may sort of knock him out of the race. You know, if he didn't get at the Globes, you think, okay, well, the Globes don't like him. He's, you know, trashed on the HFPA before. Makes sense. But SAG, who's nominated before, SAG, who, you know, likes the movie, clearly gave it multiple nominations, tied, I think, or no, Bombshell got the most, and then this was tied for 4th. I just think that, you know, maybe if you like The Irishman, for me, you like Robert De Niro because he's sort of the main character. He has the incredible emotional scenes, but maybe he's a little too boring. Maybe you don't like the de-aging. But him not getting in here at SAG, I mean, maybe we can still see for BAFTA, but even still, I'm not 100% confident I'm going to throw in Robert De Niro right now. Even still, though, even if he is my 5 slot, for example, he's still a strong 5 slot because The Irishman's so well-liked, and he's a well-liked actor, and but maybe, you know, there's certain political things that he says that people have been turned off by. I don't know. But for right now, I think that Robert De Niro is on the edge, where he once was sort of a solid lock. And then Eddie Murphy not getting in here. People thought maybe there'd be a late Eddie Murphy rise. And I think if they did nominate him at SAG, people still like the movie, but it's going to be hard for me to see him be nominated at the Oscars. Especially when Dolomite Is My Name is going to get only 1 other nomination. The Oscars seem to be a little bit more of someone like Antonio Banderas, who I think the surprise didn't get in here because he for me seemed like maybe a potential winner for the best actor. I still think he gets in at BAFTA, and I think he gets in at the Oscars because the Globes never really, or excuse me, the SAGs never really nominate and reward and recognize foreign film acting. Even going back to Roma or Cold War, none of those actors got nominated when the Roma actors got nominated at the Oscars, and then something like Amor back in the day, Manuel Rivera. She didn't get nominated at SAG, she got nominated at the Oscars, and if you remember, almost won that year too. So there's some things that, this, especially with AFTRA making a little bit larger of a voting body, I think that shows lots of great strength to Parasite. But in terms of the acting specific nominees of the foreign films, that's kind of rare, so I'm not super surprised Antonio Banderas didn't get in here. I still think he gets in. The real contender is Robert De Niro, who's falling, but who slips into that slot, I'm not too sure yet. Is it going to be Christian Bale for Ford v Ferrari? That's someone who I predicted for the Globe, so I've been really a believer in, because people really appreciate his talent and his ability to transform, and he's such a really well-respected actor, almost like a Meryl Streep in that sense, with the amount of run he's been on so far, just getting nominated year after year. So maybe he's the guy who sort of slipped in, because Ford v Ferrari could be a Best Picture winner. He's going to get some of those technical categories, which we're going to be talking about later. Even some wins, even. So I won't be surprised if Christian Bale takes his final slot. People see him as the lead actor. People like him. Maybe that's it. Or maybe it's Taron Egerton who finally got this final slot. What that really tells me is that people have seen the movie, that people remember the movie. It did well at the box office, but people remember it. He goes through this incredible range of emotions. He has been campaigning. He's playing a real life person in Elton John. Rocketman should get multiple nominations, especially whether we say costume design or the sounds or the song or things like that. So, Rocketman could be be a 5-time Oscar nominee. Right now, I think he's still behind maybe some. He's in the sort of range of him and Eddie Murphy, and then I'd probably say that 5th slot is maybe Robert De Niro or Christian Bale or Jonathan Pryce for The Two Popes, which is, he didn't get in here, and The Two Popes didn't get anything here, which is a little bit surprising. So a movie that I thought would be Oscar dominated turns out maybe not so as much. So now the movie is also kind of breaking a little bit late, but people saw it at festivals and things like that if they wanted to see it. So I'm not exactly sure the strength of The Two Popes, and even though it got it at the Globes and did well there, I'm not too sure about it as of right now. Best Supporting Actress, I went for 4 out of 5 in this one. So we have Laura Dern, Marriage Story, Jennifer Lopez, Hustlers, Margot Robbie for Bombshell, Nicole Kidman for Bombshell, and Scarlett Johansson for Jojo Rabbit. So no Zhao Zhuzhen, which I predicted, but definitely hurts her chances going into Oscar night. I'm not even sure if she gets BAFTA. Really, we haven't talked about, but The Farewell is a huge loser here too. No Awkwafina, no Zhao Zhuzhen, no Ensemble, which really, really hurts it. So I think right now, Best Picture is out of the conversation for The Farewell. Screenplay is really hurting because something like a Bombshell can come in and take over that slot. So that's really hurting. I also think that, Zhao Zhuzhen, maybe she doesn't get in here. Awkwafina, I don't think she's getting in for Best Lead Actress now. Maybe she wins at the Globes and does a really charming speech, which is very plausible, and that sort of propels her momentum. But because of the short Oscar cycle, that may not even matter and be relevant this year. I think it's the Globes happen and then Oscar voting, I think it's like 3 or 4 days later where it actually closes. So there's not enough time to really change your mind. And have you seen Awkwafina's speech? Or you don't think things like that. So these earlier awards are really sort of going to be indicative of sort of the general thoughts of the Oscar race. I talked about Florence Pugh. This maybe sort of kills her chances. Clearly I love Bombshell. I don't think Nicole getting in here sort of is a sign. Maybe she sort of sweeps and goes along with the ride with the movie. But it's still rare to have 2 nominees from the same movie get in. We're already predicting that for The Irishman. It has been sort of a trend recently. But I'm not sure if the Oscars will love Bombshell that much. I think they'll be a little bit more kind to maybe someone like a Zhao Zhuzhen. That being said, I think Antonio Banderas is going to get in because it's not just he's a foreign film actor. He's also, an international movie star in a lot of ways. He's a household name. Zhao Zhuzhen is not, even though she delivers beautiful performances and the central, person of that film. Maybe they just don't like the film as much. That could be a real situation too. Best Supporting Actor, Brad Pitt, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Al Pacino, The Irishman, Tom Hanks, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, Joe Pesci, The Irishman, and Jamie Foxx, Bombshell. Brad here continues his sort of presumptuous dominance. He should win here, because The Irishman I think will cancel. Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood has only gotten really Tom Hanks and hasn't gotten any support anywhere else. Jamie Foxx not Bombshell. Jamie Foxx for Just Mercy, excuse me. Jamie Foxx or Just Mercy. I thought Just Mercy was out of the race. What this really does is just throws a wrench into it. Is Anthony Hopkins? Well, SAG didn't like Two Popes, and that seems like a SAG movie, so that's a little bit weird. And Jamie Foxx maybe doesn't have the sort of, maybe that's sort of a SAG pick, that's a unique pick, but maybe people are considering him now. Maybe there's a lot of support for Jamie Foxx. So maybe someone new comes in. That's why I'm predicting right now Song Kang-ho for Parasite. That's my current prediction right now because I think people love Parasite. I think the Oscar race for the Best Supporting Actor is now sort of opened up a little bit, and I think Song Kang-ho slips in there. So because people are clearly responding to Parasite, so why not? This action performance by a stunt ensemble. Be quick on this one. Got 2 out of 5. Avengers Endgame, Joker, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, The Irishman, and Ford v Ferrari. I got Avengers Endgame and Ford v Ferrari. So surprised to see The Irishman and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, even though, I mean, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is about a stunt guy, but there's not a whole lot of stunts that you think in, you know, Hobbs and Shaw, for example. Actually surprised 1917 didn't get in there. War movies generally do well here. So maybe that's a sort of a fade to that kind of a movie. Well, we'll see. I think it's breaking late, and I think it'll still do pretty well at the Oscars. But we'll see, I guess. So now jumping over into my best score predictions, starting off with 1917 by Thomas Newman. I'm going back to see my father. We need to keep moving! Come on! I'm going there, no more to run. So Thomas Newman, he's a guy who they absolutely love. He's been nominated 14 times and has never won. So this may be his year. 1917, I'm still predicting to be a Best Picture contender. Could get Sam Mendes in for Best Director as well, and should get a lot of these technical categories. You know, the sounds, we'll talk about them a little bit later. You know, war movies generally do good, but it hasn't been doing so well at the guilds. But I think that's maybe more of a situation of it breaking really late rather than early, which probably would have helped his chances. But Thomas Newman, he even surprises, where this is sort of a category, I'd say, similar to the Best Director, where they like the guys they like and will nominate them multiple times, but there's still a couple of newcomers as well. But he's been nominated 14 times. He gets surprise nominations, whether it be something like Passengers. People listen to his scores. This helps as the Best Picture contender as well. It helps that sort of, you know, similar to maybe a Dunkirk, it's a race against time. So that will sort of element will help. I think he's sort of well overdue. We've seen these narratives build before in the technical categories with someone like Roger Deakins. So I wouldn't be surprised if Thomas Newman gets nominated here for 1917 and ultimately wins. My next pick is going to be Little Woman from Alexandre Desplat. Even though Little Woman has been sort of doing not as well, and I've sort of gloom and doom. It's still, I think ultimately I want to say that I think it's still going to get nominated for a few Oscars at least, just because of what sort of conventional wisdom tells us so. And even if Little Woman gets no other nominations, or he doesn't get a Best Picture nomination, he still will get in because I think that he's well respected within the industry. He's been nominated 10 times total, 7 times this decade, winning twice this decade, and in the past, 5 years? 2014 for Grand Budapest Hotel and 2017 for The Shape of Water. They like him a lot. He's a guy who's this past decade has really been the king of it in a lot of ways. So he got nominated for Isle of Dogs last year, so he'll probably get nominated here for Little Woman in the sort of classical period accurate piece. Then my next pick is going to be A Joker by Hildur Guðnadóttir. I think that she's sort of the newcomer. And actually, let me take a look at these stats. So here are the amount of newcomers that get nominated each and every year. And so there's never been a year in the past 10 years that has... There's never been a year in the past 10 years where they were all people that they've nominated before. There's always someone new that maybe haven't heard of, or that sort of surprises and gets in, and it's sort of an anointing in a lot of ways. So 2018, there was 2 newcomers, 2017, 1, 2016, 4, 2015, 1, 2014, 2, 2013, 1, 2012, 1, 2011, 1, 2010, 3. So on the lower scale, often 1 or 2, but definitely always at least 1 per year. And Joker, we know it has a lot of support by looking at the Guild Awards, by looking at the Globes, by looking at SAG. That it's enough to sort of show that people really like Joker a lot, and they're going to nominate for Best Score because it's sort of this dark and dreary kind of a heavy string-based score, which people have been really responding to. And maybe a dark horse because oftentimes the newcomers win, whether it be Stephen Price for Gravity or Lasher Ludwig Göransson for Black Panther. Next we have Star Wars Rise of Skywalker from John Williams. This is maybe sort of a lock, even though Star Wars, the second Star Wars has been, or the third Star Wars, excuse me, the second Star Wars maybe ruined the Star Wars in this new trilogy. People aren't really excited for it. There's not a lot of buzz. People have been more excited for Baby Yoda and The Mandalorian than they have for this final sort of epic end of the trilogy. But it is the end of the trilogy. John Williams, who was nominated for Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, he's one of those guys where I was looking at every year and seeing the amount of newcomers and checking and doing my research, and who was I seeing over and over again? Thomas Newman, Alexandre, Desplat, John Williams. Those guys just keep on getting nominated. Even for something like John Williams, I think got nominated for The Book Thief. So surprising sort of nominations. They're going to try to nominate John in every case they get, and I think this is sort of Star Wars classic score. John Williams, the last Star Wars movie he's ever going to score, most likely. Give him the nomination. Maybe, who knows, maybe even does a campaign for him to win. We haven't seen the film yet, and neither has the Oscar voters, but I think it's almost an automatic vote in a lot of senses. And then my final pick is going to go to Marriage Story for Randy Newman. It's a beautiful score, one of my favorites of the year, so maybe I'm have a little bit of a personal bias, but I still think that it's a noticeable score in a lot of ways. It has sort of these Randy Newman-isms. He's been nominated for score before, so people don't just see him as a Best Original Songwriter. Of course, he's been won twice, I believe, for Best Original Song for Toy Story 3 and Monsters, Inc. So he's a guy that they like, and Marriage Story is a movie that they like. So I think that the Best Picture chances really sort of help him and push him over the edge. Some possible contenders being, maybe at Astra, Max Richter is a guy who's sort of a little bit more known in the general public. We talked about Motherless Brooklyn and then the Golden Globes episode for Pemberton. Maybe he slips in, but as of right now, I think that these five are pretty locked in terms of their Best Picture contender possibilities. All five of them, I think, very well could get a Best Picture nominee, and they have sort of the brand name recognition, and then they have the newcomer, and I like sort of how it's sort of formed right now that I feel confident in those five, but who knows, maybe I'll change it a little bit later based on what things are telling me, but there's not a lot of really sort of solid guilds that we can look at for the score, so right now I think I'm pretty confident in those five. Now jumping over into Best Original Song, my first one is going to be Into the Unknown by Frozen 2. This is a movie that people have been loving because it's maybe not as critically acclaimed as the first one, but people have been seeing it. It's been doing very well at the box office, as expected. This song isn't as well known as Let It Go. It has been the cultural phenomenon, but when people think Frozen, they think of songs. I think this is maybe not my front runner to win, but my front runner at least to get nominated. This is almost a lock for to get a nomination. Put it Into the Unknown. It's the only song they're campaigning for. Frozen 2, lock it in. My next pick is I'm Gonna Love Me Again from Rocketman. Like I've been saying, Taron Egerton and Elton John have been campaigning. You want to see those guys on your stage singing the song. Just to have them at the award show, and it'd be a good sort of Rocketman's been doing very well in every situation. It's getting in at SAG, getting at the Globes, it's getting in everywhere it needs to be. So I think this one is maybe the chance to win, and because if they really campaign hard, they can win this for Best Original Song. Then we have Harriet Stand Up. Like I mentioned before, this sort of injustice song oftentimes shows up, whether that be, from Marshall, Stand Up for Something, or I'll Fight, last year with Ruth Bader Ginsburg documentary. And Cynthia Erivo is going to be nominated theoretically, so she also sings this. It's a very sort of powerful song. It fits the sort of type of a song that they've always nominated. I'd be surprised not to see it here. Then we have Beautiful Ghosts by Cats. Another original song by Andrew Lloyd Webber. Andrew Lloyd Webber is a mainstream composer and theater director the way no other really people are. I mean, I think he's in terms of the general public, in terms of who knows him, it's Andrew Lloyd Webber, it's Stephen Sondheim. These are sort of the main heavy hitters in sort of the mainstream knowledge of theater directors and composers and things like that. Coming out of the theater world. So you have an original song, even though they probably won't like Cats, it does make sense. They're going to see it. It's just sort of a check. And for example, something like The Phantom of the Opera, which I believe was the last Andrew Lloyd Webber film. He wrote an original song for that. It got nominated for Best Original Song. Makes sense. Lock it in there. And then my final pick is still going to be I Can't Let You Throw Yourself Away from Toy Story 4. Now, some people are skeptical, reasonably so, because it seems like a movie that was unnecessary, but still critically liked. People still enjoyed it, but maybe a little bit unnecessary. I still think it's going to get nominated for animated film. I still think it's going to win for animated film. And we have to remember that all three other Toy Story movies got nominated for Best Original Song. Toy Story 3 won for Best Original Song. maybe they don't want to nominate Randy Newman again, which makes sense if Marriage Story. Maybe this is one that falls out of love, but right now the stats just tell me Toy Story all the way. And then my possible contenders, really you could fill this category up with live action Disney songs. So you can do Speechless from Aladdin, or the 2 Lion King songs, and then Toy Story. But ultimately, I'm probably going to go with the Spirit from Lion King. This got in at the Globes. This is the song Beyonce sings. This is the one they're sort of campaigning for, even though there's still 2 songs that they're technically campaigning for. This is the one that seems to be the front runner. It made a bunch of money at the box office. It wasn't, I don't know, loved by everyone. It sort of seems like, yeah, it's the Lion King, but Lion King has so many great songs that you think, okay, it's the Lion King. Similar to maybe Cats, an auto nomination. Beyonce, we love Beyonce, one hour at the show. I mean, that's a little bit more of a Globes thing, and less so with the Oscars. So I think they're going to go with Toy Story 4, a movie they like, versus Lion King, assuming that's a movie they don't like. But we'll see ultimately. There's also the possibility of Wild Rose, Glasgow, the song Glasgow from Wild Rose. This is written by Oscar-winning actress Mary Steenburgen, and seems to be, from good critics, the song of the year, very powerful, but I'm not sure that many people have seen it, so I'm fading it for that reason. Okay, now jumping over to Best Sound Editing and Sound Mixing, I want to say that 4 out of my 5 nominations for these categories are the same. So when I talk about my one film, it's going to be the same as my sound editing reasons. It's going to be same as my sound editing, or sound mixing, excuse me. There's a few differences. Sound editing mostly being, has to do with largely action films get it, versus sound mixing you would see music base. Sound mixing is the levels and the volumes and the transitions between the things, but sound editing is the actual, the sound effects themselves. So there's some distinctions, but I think most people don't know the distinctions. So much so that not only does the winner of these 2 categories often match, the nominations often match. So 2018, 4 out of the 5 nominations matched. 2017, 5 out of 5. 2016, 3 out of 5. 2015, 4 out of 5. 2014, 4 out of 5. 2013, 4 out of 5. 2012, 3 out of 5. And 2011, 4 out of 5. So that means for all those 4 out of 5s or 3 out of 5s, if Dunkirk gets nominated for Best Sound Editing, it's also going to get nominated for Best Sound Mixing, and back and forth and back and forth. So these categories are almost identical in a lot of ways, with 1 or 2 changes. There's one 5 out of 5, but most of the time, I would say you always sort of want to predict with that extra little change. For example, last year, A Star Is Born got sound mixing at that sort of final slot, and A Quiet Place got sound editing, because the sound effects in A Quiet Place were really well done and really well noticeable. So you give for sound editing, and then the mixing, because A Star Is Born is a great musical film, you put it in for mixing. Makes sense, right? So my first pick for both sounds is going to be Ford v Ferrari. James Mangold, the director, is going to get a special award at the Cinema Audio Society Awards, which is really huge. It's a movie that could be a Best Picture nominee. If you see it in the theater, it's got this massive blaring sound and really great effects, and the car engine sounds and whatnot. That's really great. So I expected to get nominated both sound editing and sound mixing, and it's my front runner for as of right now. Still have to look at the Globes and not the Globes, excuse me, the Guilds and what they nominate and things like that. But right now I feel confident in Ford v Ferrari. My number 2 pick for both sound editing and mixing is going to be Rocketman. Last year, Bohemian Rhapsody, even though it was a musical film, won sound editing and sound mixing because they really love that film. Rocketman is sort of in a similar vein of a musical artist and their troubles and tribulations in sort of this traditional biopic format. It's got great songs. If it's going to be nominated for Best Original Song, you think it's going to get nominated for these sounds as well. They've been campaigning a lot. I feel confident. It also got in the Cinema Audio Society, so that's important too. 1917 is my 3rd pick. This one used to be my front runner, but hadn't been doing well at the Guilds. Didn't get in Cinema Audio Society. Like I said, I think that's maybe breaking in. That's due to it breaking late and coming out late. But that being said, it's still a war movie. War movies do well and get nominated. 2017, Dunkirk won twice. 2015, Mad Max won both. 2016, Hacksaw Ridge got one. Even going back to The Hurt Locker, it won both. So they like the war movies, especially those are all Best Picture contenders. So if 1917 is a Best Picture contender, if it's a Best Director contender, it would make sense for those sounds to also get in. But right now, that sort of lack of support from Guilds is, even the nomination is sort of alarming, so I'm not 100% confident, but it just makes so much sense. War movie, Best Director nominee, Best Picture nominee, they should like the film, right? It should get in. The war movies almost always do really well here, at least for sound editing. My thing still gets both. And then The Irishman for Best Sound Editing and Sound Mixing. A little bit of surprise, but I think The Irishman is still well liked and well respected that it will get these technical categories. surprised to see it getting in at Cinema Audio Society. But for something like a sound editing, that makes sense because there's sort of an epic journey and there's some violence and things like that. But sound mixing also makes sense because, you know, a good example would be Aviator, another Martin Scorsese picture, which has a period accurate, great soundtrack. And that mixes in well here. And Martin Scorsese is known for his soundtrack. So the way he sort of uses in The Still of the Night is repetition to repeat themes. I think that people really appreciate that in Martin Scorsese's, and known for his sort of ear. So I think people respect that. Now for my best sound editing, my sort of lone nomination, I'm going to go with Joker. This got in at the Cinema Audio Society. I don't think it's going to get in for best sound mixing because that guild is pretty good. Most of the time they get like 4 to 5 of the nominations. Accurate in terms of the sound mixing for the Oscars. But there's always one that sort of doesn't make a lot of sense. Joker I don't think makes a lot of sense for sound mixing. People do really love the film and maybe it gets both nominations. It gets in for editing but not mixing because it seems more of a little more action based, less music based. But people really like that score, so maybe it gets in for both. Who knows? But my final slot for sound mixing is going to be Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Similar to the Scorsese reason, it got in at Cinema Audio Society. Has this great soundtrack. There's some radio parts. You know, they built such an amazing soundtrack. They created radio dialogue, fake radio dialogue for the film. It's got such period accurate. It's so much fun. The music is such a center of the film. I think sound mix, and people like the movie, so why not give it that sound mixing? Possible contenders, something like an Ad Astra should get in, but it's just not as well liked. It seems to be there's always a space here. Every year, First Man, the year before that, Blade Runner 2049, Arrival, The Martian, Interstellar, Gravity. Those are 2018, 2017, 2016, 2015, 2014, 2013. All those got nominated for sound. So what's the space movie this year? Is it Star Wars? Is it Ad Astra? I don't know. You know, surprised to see Star Wars not get in at the guilds, but Ad Astra maybe seems to be a little bit more the serious, sad space movie that gets in, but I'm not sure too many people enjoyed it as much as maybe people had thought they would enjoy it. Hard to say right now. That's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you comment below. Let me know some of your thoughts on all these categories and your thoughts on the SAGs. Does this kill Little Women? Is Parasite going to win Best Picture? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. That's about it. Until next time. Stay tuned.